Oh, there we go. We are live. Who knew? I was waiting for that to happen, and automatically, I guess it has happened. So here I am, Laurelyn, Dr. LL, as my sister always says, not the real kind of doctor, the PhD science kind, which I think still counts. But today I wanted to get into toxic relationships because we've all had more than one, right? At least one. And the whole thing with toxic relationships is you have all of these feelings that you have to work through, and they're extremely complicated. You feel everything from guilt to sadness to fear to anxiety, all of this stuff. None of the feelings are good, by the way, but the hope that the relationship will somehow automagically, as I love to say, resolve itself so that things get better, that's the tough part. That's what keeps bringing you back. And there's my dog saying hello to everyone. Well, hello. How are you? Yeah, what are you sneezing? Are you allergic to the words that I'm saying? Okay. So, with toxic relationships, everything that we need to work through is harder than it sounds, right? And it's so easy to be that person on the outside giving the advice and saying, you should do this, you should do that, consider this, consider that. But unless you're directly in it, it's very challenging. Even if you're an empathic person, it's hard to understand all the things that that other person is going through. So let's put this in. So I'm just going to actually ping a few folks. And let's see if they are going to join us because some people were planning to come in. Let's see. All right, so there we go. All right, distractions are over. So with that, back to focus. Here we go. So with toxic relationships, I really want to get into feelings because it's so easy for most of us to just say, yeah, I'm going to brush all of that off. I'm going to deny how I feel. I'm going to bury it. I'm going to just completely pretend that everything's fine. Yep, on the surface, look at me. Woohoo, I'm fabulous. Life is good. I'm smiling, right? We've seen those commercials for, I don't know which antidepressant drug it is, but it really does feel very similar to when you're in a toxic relationship. All of the folks in that commercial for that antidepressant, they hold up these little happy face placards. They have a little happy face that's smiling and they put that in front of their face. But when they pull it away, they actually have a really deep frown or they may be crying. And that's what it's like. You put up this front and you have this face to everybody that says, yeah, look at me. I'm doing just fine. Don't you pay any attention to me at all. I'm fabulous. But meanwhile, you're crumbling on the inside. All of that anxiety that you're feeling, you've got endless amounts of worry. Oh, you're so afraid. Oh, am I going to say the wrong thing? Am I going to trigger the other person? Is it going to escalate to a conflict? Is it going to escalate to physical abuse? And I've been in an abusive relationship, emotional, financial, and physical. So I get it. It's really hard to extricate yourself from that. And you're always on pins and needles, just waiting literally for the other shoe to drop. And that whole feeling of being on edge, it just gnaws away at you. It never ends because you can't have any way to be able to predict how your partner is going to react. And that's part of what escalates the anxiety. You think, oh, ooh, what if I do this? Or what if I do that? Is that going to prevent them from doing something? Is that going to keep them with me? Are they going to appreciate me more if I do this instead of that? We go through so many of these machinations, all this self-doubt, and that just feeds a negative cycle. We get into lower and lower sense of self-esteem. It completely erodes our sense of self-worth. Oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough for him or her. Or, no, you're right. I don't deserve them. They're out of my snack bracket. I just shouldn't be there. And then you get to this point where you have that constant criticism. You're belittled for everything. You get so much manipulation from your intimate partner that you become you actually do feel like you become inadequate and worthless. I remember my ex, oh my goodness, nothing I did was good enough. The dishes were always dirty. He'd pick off a crumb or something on it. He'd look at me and say, yeah, your backside's getting really big. Or that outfit, it's ridiculous. You look ridiculous. Dress properly, dressed appropriately. And over time, you start to believe all of that stuff. And what happens is, well, you start to spiral. You get into more of a sense of depression now, and you think, I am not good enough. He's right, or they're right, or whatever the gender is, that doesn't matter. The other person is right. The point is, you don't feel like you're the one that's right and not doing anything right. Ooh, day by day, that stuff just really catches up to you. And the negativity, it's just so all pervasive and ongoing. You think, oh, I'm never, ever going to escape. And as you become increasingly depressed, what happens? Totally the wrong thing that should happen, right? You start isolating yourself, or your intimate partner is doing that isolation for you. You get cut off from the very people that could give you the support that you need to tell you, no, Laurelyn, you are a wonderful human being. You're a fantastic person. I love being around you. You're wonderful. Forget what he says. Don't buy into it. You need that. And then the problem is when you get into that phase of isolation, you you completely start to detach from not only the friends and family, but you start to feel lonely and really disconnected with your own support network. And by that isolation, you're reinforcing the negative belief and all the other limiting beliefs that you are worthless and you shouldn't be with anyone. Even your friends can't stand to be around you anymore because all you do is talk about that negative relationship. And then, right, it just keeps spiraling. The next part happens, the next phase. Oh, guilt. You start to feel guilty. You think, oh my goodness, maybe I didn't treat him right. Maybe there's these things that I should have done. I should have been able to fix the relationship. I shouldn't have been so demanding of my partner. All this nonsense, right? That just you go deeper and deeper into it. And I know I started to develop into this whole savior complex and thinking, oh, I can save him, I can save him. And then one year turned into two, into three, into five, and I was beating my head into the wall, or he was violent, or any of that other stuff. And then what happens? Well, you start to get confused. Maybe maybe I don't have all of the ability and powers that I needed or I thought I could. Maybe I'm not the right person for him. Maybe, you think about all the times you've been gaslit, right? Maybe he's right. Maybe I shouldn't be doing or thinking these things. It's the wrong timing. It's all of these things. You come up with 1,000 excuses. Meanwhile, you're going through death by 1,000 cuts. Everything is wrong. Everything is wrong about you. Everything is wrong about your thought process. Everything is wrong about your friends, about your support network. They're not right. What they're saying, filter it out. Don't listen to them. And eventually things get to be so overbearing that you no longer possess the ability to filter out all of the noise. From here, all of this isolation and guilt and confusion, what does it turn into? Anger and resentment. You start to hate and then loathe the toxic partner for their behavior. But then you also start self-loathing because you think, oh, I should have done this. I shouldn't have stayed so long. I shouldn't have put up with that crap. I should have put in a better boundary. I shoulda, coulda, woulda. It doesn't get you anywhere other than spiral you down further. And then once you've reached that point where you are bubbled over and you say, enough, I don't want this anymore, at least you get to that place internally. Doing it externally and telling him or them is a completely different matter because you start to develop very, very real and rational fears that the other person is going to hurt you. They're going to harm you out of retaliation for whatever steps that you do. If you extricate yourself from the relationship, or if you do as I did, which is go to the police ask for an intervention, a court order, protective orders, all of this sort of stuff that happened after. It was absolutely grueling. I know friends of mine that have gone through relationships like this, and once they've removed themselves from the toxicity, they fear being alone. So they'll often go back and forth with that toxic, intimate partner because they're so afraid of being alone. And then I've had conversations with them and say, like, what are you thinking? You'll find somebody else. Just get away, get away, get away. Escape, right? Eject, eject, hit the eject button. That's what always goes through my head. Eject, eject. You think of all of those pilots in very dangerous situations where they've had to hit eject and jump and parachute. The problem is a lot of us don't have that parachute because we've isolated ourselves or been isolated from our support network. We may have financial dependencies that we can't overcome. In my case, I was bankrolling him, but he had his paws all over the accounts, took everything, drained the accounts. Oh my God, what a son of a gun. Just one of the most horrific people I have ever had the displeasure of meeting. Anyway, so what do? You need to step back and start trying to look and identify the signs. What constitutes a toxic relationship? Manipulation, control, verbal and physical abuse, emotional abuse, all that gaslighting, the constant criticism. Once you acknowledge that the relationship is healthy, it's like any 12-step program, AA, NA, or whatever it is, you have to acknowledge that there's a problem as the first step. Once you do, from there, you can move onto the path to the next 12 steps to be able to make the positive changes that you need. And everyone talks about boundaries. Oh, say what is acceptable, what's not acceptable. Communicate these boundaries consistently, right? All the time. Be assertive, be firm. Well, when I did that, I'd get pushed off a ladder or smacked, or he'd run around with a knife in the kitchen. I'm going to come after you, say those words again, say those words again. And I remember one night where I finally got through all of this stuff and I had the courage to say, I want out. You are abusive and I do not want to have anything to do with you. And I said, not only are you abusive, you are lazy. You are taking advantage of my generosity. I bankroll all your lifestyle, out with friends, golfing, this and that, and you're not even working. You refuse to work. You refuse to do anything to help me or to help us or to help our relationship. I'm over it. And you know what he did? He jumped onto the bed, put his knee on my throat, held my head down, and had his fist right here. And he said, you take it back. You take it back. And he used a lot of foul language, which I won't use here, of course, on YouTube. You take it back. You take it back. And I said, no. He reached over to the night table to grab his gun, but little did he know that I had already put it away in the safe and changed the code on the safe. So you have to protect yourself when you do these things. You need that support. I was so lucky. I had a wonderful, wonderful bestie who was willing to take me and my dog in for however long it took. And there were a number of other friends who said, he's so dangerous. He's so unpredictable. You can't stay here. Even my own sister canceled Christmas because she didn't want to be around thinking that she was going to be attacked. He had no interest in doing anything to her, believe me, but that's a whole other conversation. And when you're practicing assertive communication, you really do have to lean into it, because if you just kind of jump right to the chase and you get there and you go, as I did, and say, yeah, I'm done. It's over. I'm out. It's too much for them to take. Their heads blow. They can't, because they've never faced any confrontation from you. You have to slowly and stepwise and consistently keep challenging anything. Anytime they say, oh, you look ugly, you're fat, you're this, and say, no, I'm not. In fact, I got a compliment today from so-and-so or whatever. And you've got to push back. And you have to have that exit plan. I knew enough to put the guns in the safe. I didn't know about all of them. I knew about one, but that was the only one I knew. I didn't know there were a whole bunch more in the attic, which is another story for another time, but I had my exit plan. The next day, I had everything ready to go. I had my bags packed and I went out and said, let's walk on the street together, where I knew it was a public space. Said, let's talk about last night. And he was like, oh, you're just being irrational. You're being emotional, this and that. And said, no, I want out. And he blew a gasket, but safely, because I was in the public streets. I had my keys and I had my car packed with the things that I needed. That's what you have to do. And then from there, and ever since, it's been a complete path of personal growth. How do you do it? How do you get beyond? How do you recognize the signs of an abuser so that you never, ever, ever get into a relationship with one of them again? So this was very heavy stuff, and I appreciate you listening to me and hearing all of it. Next week, we're going to have my co-host. She'll be here and we'll be digging in, doing some of the lighter side of the toxic stuff, but still always here and here for you to build this community and support group around whatever it is that you need regarding the toxic experiences that you're having, so that we work together to help you navigate them, build our community, and help each other get through them. Stay tough, because we all know that's toxic, and you don't need to be around anything that's toxic. It's never a good idea.